I'm ready to attach it to the camera body, and looks like I have one more wire to reconnect. I usually try and get this one when I install the mirror box, but I guess I missed it. Okay, now I can attach the front plate. Make sure all the wires are clear and properly routed so they don't get pinched. If you watched the second video in this series, you may recall a special feature of these screws. They have a small conical bushing that is part of the adjustment system for the positioning of the front plate. Probably the most important feature of the front plate is simply to hold the lens at exactly the right distance from the film. And each of these mounting points has an adjustment that helps to set that distance. I haven't touched the adjustment, I've just left it at the factory setting, but I will check the flange distance after I get this screwed down. So measuring the flange distance is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to stick a depth gauge through the camera and take a measurement. But there are a couple important details to pay attention to. One is the position of the film plane. Looking at the back of the camera, there are two sets of rails that surround the frame. And on casual viewing, they look to be at the same height. But if I place some film in the camera, you can see that it only rests on the inner rails. The outer rails are for the pressure plate. When the film door is closed, the plate pushes against those rails and helps to hold the film flat. But the outer rails are raised by about the thickness of the film. The pressure plate doesn't push directly on the film, but instead it creates a very small gap for the film to slide through. So for my measurement, I want to put the gauge block on the inner rails, as the outer rails would be slightly behind the film plane. And here's the depth gauge.
Desafia a usar suas roupas preferidas no Parque das Manchas. Hora do desafio.
Mas vai sair?
A nova fórmula de Vanish com Oxy Accelerator tira as manchas mais difíceis como gordura até na coloria e ainda protege as cores.
The latch reinstalled, the wind gears are now fixed in place, and I can remove the timing marks I made with the lacquer. The wick, carrying into the other end, where it gets deposited on the stop of the wind gear. What I don't quite understand is why this type of lubrication was necessary at this particular point instead of the standard latching grease, which is used literally everywhere else. What's so special about this mechanism? I don't have a good answer yet. Assembly is that I have to load the spring for the pawl before I screw it all down. So I have to hold the collar on with one tool while getting the spring hooked on with my tweezers. Before I put on the main support shaft for the winder, I'll do a little demo of how the frame number is implemented. These two little teeth right here are going to travel counterclockwise all the way around the gear, and at the very end will engage with and rotate the large silver gear by exactly one tooth. There it goes. The smaller gear on top meshes with the counter gear, this one right here. When the camera is fully assembled, the counter dial sits on top of this post and turns with the gear. It's also spring loaded, and when the small gear is disengaged from the counter gear, the dial springs back to 0. Okay, now I'm going to get this plate on before all those loaded springs start shooting across the room. I need to lubricate the main support shaft. This will keep the feel of the advance lever nice and smooth and also prevent wear on the moving parts. Here's a quick look at that ratcheting assembly. On the left is the wind driver with its spring-loaded pawls, and when the main wind gear is installed, those lock into the ratcheting teeth. Now the advance lever can move the gears in one direction while still swinging freely back into its stowed position. If you remember from the last video, this large spring is supposed to be coiled around the wind driver, but during this assembly it kind of got away from me. So before I reinstall, I need to wrap it back up. The tricky part is knowing just how much slack to leave in the wind. If wound too tight, the advance lever won't be able to move, and if too loose, it can interfere with other parts of the camera. The guideline given in the service manual is to have the end of the spring extend roughly to the center of the camera when it's pulled tight. Now I can put the stop plate back on and get it installed. In order to get the pawls properly engaged with the ratchet gear, I start the wind driver with a slight counter rotation, and then as I move it needs to be lubricated with shutter oil, and the mirror return gear meets those qualities. Hold the lens at exactly the right distance from the film, and each of these mounting points has an adjustment that helps to set that distance. I haven't touched the adjustment, I've just left it at the factory setting, but I will check the flange distance after I get this screwed down. They look to be at the same height. But if I place some film in the camera, you can see that it only rests on the inner rails. The outer rails are for the pressure plate. When the film door is closed, the plate pushes against it. And the meter circuit. I could just reinstall this and resolder the connections, but I want to give the PCB a little glow up first. The old solder sometimes doesn't reflow as well as it did on first. It gives some specific values to check. For example, I should see 1 kilo ohm at 1/1000th of a second and ISO 100, but I can't set the shutter speed to that. This one feels pretty resistant to my scraper, unfortunately. Eventually I'm able to scrape off the foamy part, but I couldn't get the original adhesive backing to budge. It's still on there. I think it's okay. It shouldn't affect the new foam that I'll put on. attached with a shoulder screw, and once the screw is fully tight, the brake should still be free to swing. The spring will provide the necessary braking force. Peel off in long strips, but that's not happening here. Everything is just coming off in bits and pieces. But I can still feel it sticking to the walls of the channel quite a bit. This isn't much of an improvement over my usual method. I think I need more alcohol. Okay, second attempt. I'm just going to apply the IPA directly to the adhesive. Let's try it out. Yeah, that's what a camera's supposed to sound like. Well, I think that wraps up all of the big mechanical maintenance that I had planned for the camera. I just have some light surface cleaning and shutter adjustments to do. But the next big task is checking the light meter and working out any gremlins that may still be hiding in the wires. In the next video, I'll evaluate the individual components of the meter, freshen up the solder, and then reassemble and calibrate. See you then.
Se a gripe te tira do jogo, Benegripe devolve. Só o Benegripe tem a potência da fórmula única.
On the battery that is driving current through two separate legs, actually it goes this way because of the negative polarity.